In this video, we're going to watch my 2020 showreel that got me my first professional camera job with the BBC. And then we're going to watch my 2022 showreel that got me my first in-house camera job at the BBC on a big international blue chip wildlife production. I've also got 9 tips to share. My personal favourite's probably number 8. Before we watch my 2022 showreel, I've got a little surprise to share, so stick around for that one. And if you want to see how we got to this point, I'll put a link to my last video here where we watched the showreels from 2017 and 2019. Right, 2020. So with this one, I put some more sound design on it. It's quite heavy on the long lens side of things. So long lens being when you've got a telephoto lens like this one on a tripod. Bit of drone time-lapsing. This is when I was at Oxford. I was there for a whole spring so I could film the bluebells coming up in a time-lapse like that. It's a deciduous woodland that I was working in and managed to find this lovely little family of foxes. Woodland foxes are actually really hard to film in the UK because they're so badly persecuted. I spent quite a few evenings there. And the mum would come back and bring them food. The mum was always, they were always more skittish when the mum was around. I think that might actually be the dad. These fox cubs remind me so much of Fig now, or Fig reminds me so much of these fox cubs even. So I was working on a Sony a7S II at this point. That's actually a pigeon. I was using a Sony a7S II. I think I was probably using the Canon 100-400 Mark II. So a lot of this is around low light conditions, so evening time, sun setting. And the a7S II is a really good camera for that because it's got that full frame. It's not something I would necessarily recommend a full frame camera, but we can talk about that in another video. You can kind of see the grain in this shot. This is quite dark. Little baby badger. Badgers and bluebells. Quite difficult to find spots where you can actually film that. I remember at the time Silverback were looking to film badgers and bluebells for Wild Isles. I think they'd actually visited Whiteham Woods, which is where this is, to recce it for that. Oh, that was actually a bit of off speed there, a bit of slow motion. So this is back onto my DSLR, my Canon 70D, which doesn't shoot off speed, doesn't shoot any slow motion. Can only shoot at 25 frames a second, and there's a GoPro. These are from my last showreel. Bit of drone, scientists collecting caddisfly larvae. Bit of underwater macro in a tank, quite badly lit. I'd definitely improve on that now. I think, yeah, looking back at this showreel, I mean, although this showreel did get me my first job, and I'll explain that in a minute, I'd probably get rid of this part of it, the macro. It's a bit less concise as the sequences there. These are some quite nice time lapses. Just showing a bit of variety to my skill set. A bit of camera trap work with the badgers. Okay, my first point is show what you're selling. So what's the point of a showreel? The point of a showreel is to be able to take your portfolio of work to somebody and say, will you pay me to make some of this for you? In wildlife, the bread and butter of filming animals is often a long lens, right? So this is a Sigma 150 to 600. And what it allows us to do is zoom in on animals from a distance, so you don't have to get close and disturb them. Now, this showreel got me my first paid job, but I actually got noticed by the series producer on Springwatch because I had flown an FPV drone through a beaver habitat. And then he asked me, Mark Flowers this is, he asked me to see my showreel, and this is what I sent to him. Now from this showreel, what you can see is I've got sequences of foxes and sequences of badgers. There's all those story elements of what they're doing. I've followed behaviour. So with the badgers, you've got collecting bedding, in the bluebells, cubs, nice sunset, nice details of the leaves. So you can make that into a film. You can cut all those moments and you can make a story. With the foxes, you've got the feeding behaviour. So you've got the cubs in nice light, lots of angles, lots of shots. You've got the parents, they bring back a pigeon. I don't think they actually used that because what they did, they took this footage and then they cut it into something called a mindful moment, which are short kind of 1 minute things with sound design on them that they play to an audience. So first point, show what you're selling. If you want to sell drone, show just drone. If you want to sell long lens, show long lens. Tip number 2, it goes back to last video actually of telling a story, but we're going to build on that to not just tell a story, build sequences. So when you're thinking about your show reels or what you might do with your footage, you might just be collecting footage when you're out in hides and things. You've got to think about how that footage can be put together and whether it can tell a story. And if it can't tell a story, maybe think about those elements, those shots that you could take from the environment or from different angles that you can add into it to then tell a story or be able to create a sequence that can be stitched together by an editor. Number 3, access. So I think this is actually a really big point because a lot of people who I see managing to break into the industry with their first camera rolls, whether they're a camera assistant or whether they're able to just be a shooting researcher or something like that, it's often because their showreel stands out a little bit. Often the way I think you can make your work stand out is through the access that you've gained. So what do I mean by access? What I mean is, so in this showreel I've shown footage of foxes, woodland badgers and bluebells. Now where do you find those? Where do you film those? That's not, I don't have those on my doorstep here now where I live. I was working in a woodland as a researcher for Oxford, and I was going out and filming in the evenings. So I've just had a really nice evening, been out for 3 hours, and I spent the last hour watching the fox cubs. There's 5 of them. And because I had access to film those animals, I could put them into a showreel that maybe no one's seen before. For some examples, I can think of people who have done this. Wildlife wardens on islands in Scotland. There's a great island off the south coast of Wales called Skocum Island, which I managed to visit for a couple of weeks. And you can get some amazingly close access to puffins there. Or you might, just in your local nature reserve, right? You might know the warden there and there might be a fox den there that no one else has filmed. And you have access to it because it's your local patch and you can go down there every day and you can spend time there. So composition and shot variation. This, I think, is very important to be able to show that you have what's called an eye, right? So like developing your eye. I mean, everyone's developing your eye in terms of being able to look at shapes and lines and composition. So you've got your rule of thirds, you've got diagonal lines that create points of power in an image. And you want to practice being able to show that in your camera work. If you're doing camera movement, thinking about where your shot starts its composition and where it ends its composition, and how that tells a story from a point of view of the audience. And, you know, play with your compositions in your showreel. You want to show that you're creative. You want to show that you can capture a scene in an interesting way and yes, still use the shots that are most powerful and show character and show the animals in a very nice way. But what about a wide shot where that animal's really small on the horizon? If you actually, a brilliant thing to practice is go to or look at the Wildlife Photographer of the Year. They are some stunning compositions, and take inspiration from things like that and draw that into your camera work when you're putting portfolios together. My last point on this show reel is skill variation. I did lean quite heavily into the long lens on this, but I also had other things here which I showed. I could do time lapses. I had a bit of drone in there, a little bit of macro. I possibly would leave that macro out now, but that's because I've got better things to replace that with. I've got camera traps in there, but it also, this kind of showing what skills you have also goes a little bit back to that first point of show what you're selling. So if there's a specific skill set you're really good at, you know, lean heavily into that. And some people, they'll make a show reel which is purely just long lens or purely just drone. And I do that as well, depending on who I'm going to talk to and what they need for their story in terms of a camera person. I will show them my long lens work or my drone work, or I do have a macro show reel as well. And I might just show them those show reels instead of my, what I call highlights show reel. Okay, before we watch my next show reel, which got me that big in-house camera job on an international blue chip at the BBC, I want to make a little announcement. I really want to grow this channel. And one thing that I really want to also share with you is my dad's artwork. It's inspired me through my whole life. He's done some artworks inspired by my films, which I love. And I've designed these mugs and bottles with them. And on the 5,000th subscriber, I want to send that lucky person one of these, and you can choose which one you want. I hold these very dear, so I just want it to be a bit of a sign of appreciation for you guys following along and supporting this channel, and I want to be able to produce more content like this for you. And as we grow, hopefully we can do more things like this. 2022 show reel, let's go. So like I said, I often make a few show reels, and this is my highlight show reel from 2022 after I'd done some work for the BBC. So that was a little toad film that I'd filmed for them. These herons were a heronry in Bristol. This is the New Forest. So those two shots match together. I'm going to talk about this film in my next one, these lace wings. Two shots paired together there, followed by a kingfisher. So one, kingfisher diving, two, kingfisher POV, three. And that leads into a beaver shot, long lens from the drone. And then we're into a heronry, introducing these characters, these big chicks. I chose this one specifically because it had that drop off in the background to create that nice out of focus background. There's a bit of compositional change there. Tracking birds in flight. Again, composition. Tracking and moving. Letting something come into the frame. That's a baby beaver. That was used on Wild Isles, those shots actually. Okay, mood and light. There's a big differentiator between that first show reel and this one, and it's the use of tone and light in the things that I was capturing, those moments that I was capturing. I'd been commissioned to make a sequence about toads, using lighting in that to just highlight her outline, or the fact that they come out when it's wet and it's raining. Wet sequences are always great to bring out the cinematography of a scene, because you can just, it adds those highlights, those pops of light that can bring something alive. Just those little moments like the puffin's head turn, when it just brings those eels into the light and just highlights what we're looking at, or the heron backlit. Like, I chose that heronry quite specifically because I could get up behind it and at sunrise it would be backlit. So the herons would be flying through backlit light, and the first shot where it licks its lips and it breathes and you can see its breath. The only reason you can actually see the breath is because it's backlit and then the sun is highlighting that moist, warm air coming out of its mouth. Point number 7, resolutions and off-speed. What do I mean by that? Resolutions, what I mean is moving from 1080p to 4K. And off-speed, what does off-speed mean? It means shooting slow motion. So if we shoot on speed, you're shooting in the UK, you're shooting at 25 frames a second. Now, this is why I wanted to share my previous video before this one, because I didn't start on this camera and I didn't start on the A7S II. So this camera is a Z camera, E2S6. I started on this camera I'm filming this on right now. It's the Canon 70D DSLR, and it can't really shoot off speed. It can't shoot 50 frames a second. And with wildlife, you don't shoot anything on speed. Almost everything is shot off speed, slow motion, whether it's at 30 frames a second, 40 frames a second, 50 frames a second, 120 frames a second to film a bird diving into water. And this showreel has that. And that is one of the things that helped me get interviews for the bigger blue chip shows, was that use of resolutions and frame rates. But I think it's really important that you don't let that kind of fill your head of like, if I don't shoot 4K, then it's not worth it. Because I think you can show off a lot of skills without having to shoot 4K. This is my favorite one. This is my favorite point. It's about emotion and using natural weather and light to display emotion. One of my favorite shots in that showreel is the heron that's hunkered down in the rain and the water's like splashing on its back. And then there's that shot with them in the bottom right corner where it's framed, and they're just, you can see they're in this kind of lush spring canopy and the rain's all pouring in around them. And you can use weather to show adversity. Sunlight, glorious, happy, rain, moody, clouds, lightning, wind, adversity. Not all people suggest using music and sound design in showreels, but I think it can be helpful if it helps portray emotion. I would always suggest cutting a showreel to cut your imagery first. So I always put my imagery, because that's what I'm trying to sell, I always put my imagery on the timeline on my edit sequence first to say like, these are the best images I've ever taken. And then once I've done that, I might try and find music to then go with it. I don't cut to music first because I'm not a composer. I'm a cameraman. So that's what I put front and first. But sound design can also really help draw an audience into your showreel. But sometimes I'm watching a showreel with a director who I'm pitching to, and I'll turn the sound off. And sometimes they'll turn the sound off and we'll talk over it. And some people don't like my taste in music, which absolutely fair enough. I might have chosen the wrong song. You might just be in the wrong mood. And I don't want the music to turn you off my actual camera work, because that's what's important in the showreel. Okay, number 9, my final point and closing point is your best bits. A showreel is about your best work. Those two showreels were quite different lengths. The first one was 4 minutes long. The second one was 2 minutes long. I now kind of swear by the 2-minute rule, but when I was starting out, I didn't always stick to that. And it's not a hard and fast rule. For me, my experience is such that 2 minutes feels like a good length. In my now professional reels, which unfortunately I can't share, but maybe in a future video, we can look at them and talk about them. I keep my highlights to 2 minutes and I kill shots that don't fit in. I think it's really good exercise to make a sequence which is maybe 8 minutes long and then just kill it off, cut it off. And then you're really just asking people to watch the very best of your work in 2 minutes. You don't want to be making them sit through your mediocre shots. You want them to watch the very best work you can do, because that's going to give you the best opportunities to get that job. And I hope you found this all helpful. If you've enjoyed this video, then maybe you're going to enjoy my next one, which is going to be a look behind the scenes of a film I made for the BBC that Chris Packham called the most outstanding nature film Springwatch has ever broadcast. Stay tuned for that, and if you've made it this far, then I want to let you know that your support is really appreciated, and I'll see you next time.